time is it?
Game is good. Game is good. Game is good.
Well, I wasn't into this Demonica game. But you know what it reminded me of? A game that I remember being really good.
Game is good.
Nox is an isometric action RPG released in early 2000. Originally conceived as a personal hobby by its developer Michael Booth, it impressed an executive at Westwood Studios, and they moved forward with acquiring it and shaping it into a full-length game that would feature the high fantasy setting of Magic the Gathering with the fast-paced action of Quake. Nox was a highly anticipated game in certain circles and was prominently displayed at the 1999 E3 convention. While researching, I got sort of caught up watching GameSpot's coverage of E3, and this thought kept worming its way into my head. How have we never outed Adam Sessler as being reptilian? But there was also another thought that was more like, boy, this used to be exciting, huh? Like people really cared about this. There was shit to look forward to in life. We were about to see the release of the PlayStation 2, Nintendo's Dolphin, soon to be renamed GameCube, the Dreamcast.
Dreamcast this year will deliver what we believe is not the next generation system, but a new way of playing, a new way of gaming. We're including a 56K modem in this system, which will evolve into a community.
The last real console war, in my opinion, wherein all three participants had vastly different hardware and software, was about to take place. People were getting first looks at games like Deus Ex, Planescape Torment, Diablo 2, Nocturne, an awkward alpha build of Max Payne, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Eternal Darkness, Shenmue, Blue Stinger, Vampire the Masquerade, Final Fantasy VIII, and of course Nox. That's a tidal wave of great shit. I mean, of course there was a bunch of Star Wars piss to wade through, but what a insane lineup. I like all those games. All those games were going to come out at the same time. We were going to get 3 new consoles that were vastly different from each other, and each with their own library of games. David Bowie was there. Oh no, I think it's happening. I'm becoming complacent. I only like shit from my adolescence. No. Sorry. I was having a 90s fit. I can't let it get to me. Once I surrender to apathy, it's all over. I mean, it's not all bad. We've got indie games, and they re-release a lot of older games nowadays. Bloodstained is going to come out sometime this decade. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to talk about Nox now. Nox opens with a woman named Hecuba, self-proclaimed queen of the necromancers, performing some kind of summoning ritual to get her hands on this glowing orb that elsewhere on Earth is being used to decorate a guy named Jack's TV set. Though the ritual is a success and she gets the glowing orb, Jack was sucked into the world of Nox along with it, and crash lands on an airship owned by an eccentric airship captain. There is clear inspiration from the original Diablo, and there was no shortage of critics pointing out the similarities between it and Diablo 2, which would release a few months later. But what Nox makes abundantly clear from its opening cutscene is that this is not a gloomy high fantasy horror story, but a fun, lighter-hearted adventure through a fantasy world more inspired by Magic the Gathering and Lord of the Rings and traditional fantasy stuff. At this point, you are allowed to choose between 3 character classes: Warrior, Conjurer, and Wizard, and your choice actively affects how you will experience the story of Nox. And to be honest, it's not the most plot-intensive of a game, but the amount of variation in the story based on your class is commendable. Though the captain is not pleased to have you crashed on his ship, he offers... Fucking... come on. Get it together. He offers to spare your life in exchange for the TV set that followed you through the portal. So depending on what class you choose, you will be dropped off at an appropriate place to hone that class. The first one I was initially drawn to was the Conjurer, given that he was the only class proficient with bows and, well, I'm kind of an archery guy. By choosing the Conjurer, the story begins at the village of Ix, where you seek out training as a Conjurer. Though your class decides your perspective of the story, the main story beats play out pretty similarly. The path of the Conjurer is a pretty passive one that for the most part doesn't involve getting mixed up in the two factions of Nox. Choosing either the warrior or the wizard will do a better job setting up some of the supporting characters. Either way, your goal is to stop Hecuba from using her army of necromancers to take over Nox. All three story branches lead you to a magical weapon called the Staff of Oblivion. The only problem is some fucking dummy dickhead broke it into pieces and you gotta trot across the globe restoring it. Meanwhile, Hecuba shows up to threaten you and sends one of her goons to fight you. The story is expanded a little bit every time you are brought to a new area. The captain gives you some insight into the origins of Hecuba and the feud between warriors and wizards. Long before Jack arrived, there was a war called the Necromancer War, wherein a group of necromancers attempted to take control of Nox, until they were stopped mostly by a man named Jandor, who was wielding the Staff of Oblivion. Despite defeating the necromancers, Jandor walked away from the warrior's life after being instructed to kill an infant, who, because of this refusal, would grow to become Hecuba. In the fallout, the powerful warlord Horrendous outlaws magic and despises all those who use it, even the well-intentioned wizards. It's pretty standard but well-executed traditional fantasy stuff, but not as lore-rich as a Blizzard property. I guess we'll never really know though, because Westwood was taken to the back of the fucking shed by EA, and any hopes of its planned expansions and sequels went with it. It wasn't even as dramatic and final as all that. EA just took the property out of their hands and was just like, yeah, you know what, second thought, we don't need this at all anymore. Shut down the servers, nobody likes this. Then, a couple Command & Conquer games later, they were back at the shed. Who's to say how Nox could have evolved and expanded? It's not all that deep or original on paper, but it is bursting with character and a dry sense of humor. It's just fun. I've replayed Diablo 3 a few times, and I still have to admit that it has an exceedingly joyless, forgettable story. Like, it's silly, but I don't know if it knows why it's so silly and why it just weirdly watered down its lore and filled it with goofy shit that it takes completely serious. I'm entirely just being an asshole. I mean, I still play it every now and then, but a fun story it is not. Nox is goofy and it knows it's goofy. Each class gets a different ending, though they don't differ all that strongly. The ending for the Conjurer storyline is often thought of as the bad ending, but I mean, it's not a bad ending. It seems a logical enough conclusion to the game. They all do. Playing as the wizard is probably the most ideal ending, but it is of course the most difficult class to play with. It's absolutely intended for multiple playthroughs, and even questions how you'd fare in a different class in the end credits. But I suppose I shouldn't get into those details until I get to the gameplay segment. Right now. I don't want to parrot the critics of the time by repeatedly comparing Nox to Diablo, even though it's a completely valid comparison, but it does help display how unique Nox's gameplay is. Conceptually, the control scheme is pretty similar to Diablo, as well as the perspective, but Nox differs on nearly every other level. You still click to move around your character from an isometric perspective, but where Diablo was a slow-paced, mostly traditional RPG adventure, Nox strives to be a faster-paced action RPG more akin to an early first-person shooter. Both games have you choose between 3 classes, but Nox's story is strongly affected by the class you choose, and although there are familiar RPG elements like looting items and leveling up, none of this is deeply significant to your playthrough. Leveling up doesn't lead you to a character sheet where you distribute points to attributes you'd like to power up. You kinda just have to take the game's word for it that, well, you're stronger now. Each class has differences in what they can equip. Warriors can wear pretty much anything and use any melee weapons. Conjurers can wear leather armor and use any bows. Wizards can only wear robes and use staffs. But in the later parts of Nox, each class receives the strongest weapon in the game, and all 3 classes can wield it, so that nullifies some of the differences. Upgrading your weapons and armor isn't so much a vital mechanic as repairing or replacing them. You'll find a lot of them from enemy drops and chests, but you're not going to come across, a greater steel-forged two-handed sword of eternal bleeding, and then compare it to the stats of your frost-bitten cudgel of "Dad, where are you, Dad? I need your help."
He sounds scared and worried about children.
And if it's better, you swap it out. Something that Diablo 2 nailed and made infinitely rewarding, but in Nox, you're more likely to come across a dozen of the same item, which will be a generic leather helmet, which you can either sell or swap out with your own as items become damaged and need to be either replaced or repaired pretty frequently. Also like Diablo, aside from clicking on your enemy to attack them, be it ranged or melee, you'll need your other hand primed on some hotkeys. 2 sets of them actually, one for your potions and another for your spells or abilities if you're a warrior. There are several spells to choose from and you can organize them on this little tray, and there are 5 pages in that tray, and several spells to choose from, and you can organize them how you see fit. The wizard and conjurer obviously will make the most use out of the spell bar, and spells range from regular fireballs to teleportation and invisibility and traps, and one I utilized a lot which turns an enemy into a companion who follows you around and fights for you, provided you have the creatures page in your bestiary. I don't remember if they call it that, I might just be classing that up. You can have 2 bigger creatures or 4 smaller ones under the Captivate spell, and you can even heal them or give them antidotes and whatnot. Do not get attached to them. Don't give them names. Trust me.
This is gonna hurt if it ever ends.
But you know, it's sort of annoying when they would run off after one of the more elusive enemies and I can just see them fade away on my minimap. Another nod to Diablo. And a lot of times they would just leave for good. I mean, I tried to make them a good home, and I guess I thought I was being supportive, such as life. Magic is refilled by either finding potions or coming across mana veins, which restore a bit of your mana and then require a brief cooldown before you can use them again. You'll never be too far from one of these. You can usually tell a boss fight is coming when you notice an abundance of them. This is already a lot to keep track of given how quickly combat can move in this game, and believe it or not, in the earlier stages of development, the process of casting a spell came with its own difficulty. The developers assumed that the game would be too complicated to play on a standard keyboard, and a gamepad would be required. So casting a spell would require you to memorize a sequence of buttons. Thankfully, they realized that this would be giving too much credit to the fucking idiot dummies out there, and they omitted this mechanic, but there are still traces of its existence. When you cast spells, Jack lets out a series of, grunts, and a sequence of hand signs appear around him.
John!
Essentially automating the abandoned spell mechanic. It also just sounds time-consuming and not helpful in dire situations. This is already a game where dying can happen in an instant while turning a corner. This also applies to real life, but mainly in certain back alley operations and condemned shipping yards that you have no reason poking around. Yes?
Hey, I just thought you should know that someone's poking around at the shipping yard. You want me to make them take them out, make them more get them to the place where you could get in a place that's not gonna pick the get them I can make them you make them not so much with the being alive no more.
Yeah, if I read you correctly, then yes, I think we're on the same page. Although, can you make sure it doesn't have olives this time? What was that?
They did what you asked.
Well, are we not talking about pizza right now?
Look, I'm gonna have a little trouble coming my way. It looks like he has some pals with.
Am I getting a pizza or not? I did not confirm. Oh, speaking of just rounding a corner and dying, this can happen frequently thanks to what was actually a pretty inventive concept, and that is Nox's field of vision, which you've no doubt noticed by now. It's common for top-down games like Warcraft to have a fog of war system in place, meaning you can't see every bit of your environment right off the bat, because, well, how would you know? What, do you have elf eyes? Spoiler alert, you don't. That was really bitchy of me to write, I'm sorry about that. Nox has a slightly more dynamic approach to this called True Sight, in that you can only see what it would be believable for Jack to see in a 360 arc at any given moment. So despite putting the camera up in the sky, we still can't see through walls and whatnot. I thought this was handled pretty well and kept things unpredictable, and any difficulty it causes in keeping your bearings is aided by the mini overlay map. In some cases of backtracking, I'd mostly be looking at this little dot instead of the actual character. I'd say Nox would be more easily described as Diablo sped up and simplified into an action experience and less reliant on hub areas to complete quests in. It's very much a straight line to the end. It's really fun and genuinely challenging at times. Death can come so often and easily in Nox, and not being a big action game guy or into the more punishing game experiences, I was frequently frustrated by this game just fucking wrecking me over and over. And it seems all the more disrespectful that when you die, everything you own just spills out of you like you've been holding your entire inventory in your bowels. I could have done it, just so you know. The final confrontation with Hecuba requires you to pull together all you've learned and unlocked while playing. You can't just rely on having a superpowered stick to win, and it's a considerably tense and long fight. Overcoming this game's difficult campaign is rewarding and made me immediately want to ramp up the difficulty by playing as the wizard. This might just be me Listen to how dumb this sentence I wrote is. This might just be me being greedy, but I don't really see why they couldn't give us an option to play as a female character. I mean, there's one in the opening. What if she just got sucked into the TV instead of Jack? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the most diverse time to expect that. I just don't really identify with most male characters, with their weak-ass facial hair. I suppose I'd be doing Nox a disservice by not mentioning that a lot of the hype for this game was aimed at its multiplayer component. They even held a 5-hour Meet Nox tour in San Francisco in advance of the game, where a series of multiplayer matches were held, and the winner was to receive $200 in the form of a CompUSA store value card. This proved to be a successful marketing campaign and garnered a lot of praise from gaming magazines. Having said that, I don't know dick about that. My experience with multiplayer gaming beyond World of Warcraft is very limited. I'm sure it's great. The multiplayer was meant to be similar to the traditional deathmatch and capture the flag type games featured in Unreal and Quake. You can watch videos of people who apparently still play that somewhat recently, and it looks crazy frustrating, but I guess if you're into that, it looks like that thing you might like. If you have a couple like-minded friends who want to LAN party up and play a game that's almost 2 decades old. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a tall order, having friends. Nox is visually of its time, but thankfully, it was a pretty great time. Despite coming out around the same time as Diablo 2, it manages to have a few visual bells and whistles that rivaled it, like being able to push around objects and furniture in the environment and these cool animations when you destroy certain things. But it does have significantly less going on than Diablo 2. Both in density of things on screen as well as just thematically. Nox is just a pretty standard looking medieval world. Not an unpleasant looking one though, with character sprites that are pre-rendered 3D models. The True Sight's system of blacking out things you wouldn't be able to see, for better or worse, grants the game a particular aesthetic. One could argue it makes things look a little busy, but they took a risk with it, and there are certain moments, especially in caves or rooms with windows, where it looks kind of impressive and ahead of its time. Though don't tell that to the author of GameSpot's review, who, despite giving a pretty good score, maligned, "The effect..." No, I'm not going to do this in a voice. "The effect isn't revolutionary, since 1983's Ultima 3 featured a rudimentary version of a similar system, and the result can be more distracting than interesting." Yeah, fucking rad, dude. This is the same thing. All respect to Ultima, of course. I feel like I totally just added that so fans of Ultima wouldn't get mad at me. Those fucks! This game's soundtrack is really grand and fantastic, with choir vocals and pounding timpanis, music things. It was composed by Frank Klepacki, who did most of Westwood's game scores, and it's a lot of fun. Unlike a lot of other games at the time, there is a solid hour of music to cover all the different locations of Nox and cutscenes, and it spans a pretty wide array of sounds. It's solid stuff and pairs well with this game's high fantasy setting. Voice acting is also really well done. Every character, with perhaps the exception of some townspeople who are probably just staff at Westwood.
The ogres have destroyed everything. Maybe we shouldn't have built so close to the ogre village.
All sound great. A lot of fun and playfully over-the-top performances, especially from Hecuba, who was played by Joanna Cassidy.
Yes! Yes! Oh, rise my infernal minions! Mindless zombies! You will obey me and only me, for I am your one and only master.
Not to belittle her career to one role, but I mean, I know her as Zora from Blade Runner. Such a fun character. My frustration with dying was often subverted by hearing a new monologue from her.
Your failure to bring back the heart of Nox, resulting in your meaningless death, must, I suppose, be considered the bad news.
The captain is played by Alan Oppenheimer, who is in everything, an equally charming performance.
And it is up to us to journey to the Field of Valor, where you must find out for sure if she is communing with the undead through her ancestors' occult art of necromancy.
Mark Rolston, Ian Abercrombie, character actors with a long body of work. Also the main character, Sean William Scott. This is a game built on admiration for a nostalgic treat of a game and games in general, and it does an admirable job mimicking, changing, and improving, in some cases, its audio and visuals. If you have any kind of fondness for this era of games or this genre, for this alone, I'd recommend it. I mean, not that being nostalgic alone makes a game worth playing. Stop it! I won't let it take me!
Sorry, unexplained.
Nox is a deeply enjoyable, pleasant, challenging, and woefully forgotten relic. It came out at the height of my susceptibility to excitement about video games. It was a pocket of time when I was being perfectly pandered to, and though it pains me to admit it, I kinda miss it. I mean, the issues I have with the current state of gaming go beyond, well, they used to make games that looked a certain way and stuck to a certain genre conventions, and now it's all online games as service bullshit. In that same video I sobbed over a couple minutes ago, there are hints. It's not as clear as it is now, but you can see the path.
With all this flash, what's happening to content and gameplay?
The biggest trend we're seeing right now is one that started a couple of years ago, but is really picking up steam, which is the online multiplayer gaming.
I think the number one trend that I've seen in this year's E3 in PC gaming is just really the emergence of online only.
A lot of the games here are either exclusively online or have a very large multiplayer component. And this might beg the question, are we looking at a permanent shift in the industry?
Figuring out how to scale to larger and larger worlds is really important.
I think in the RPG world, people won't tolerate a game that's all flash and no content.
All that matters are the games and the guys that make the games.
It was always there. It was always going to happen, I suppose. I guess I just figured when we got here, there would still be a place for Nox or Vampire the Masquerade or Nocturne to get just as much attention and care as any game. There's plenty of hope in the indie scene, but also plenty of projects that suffer similar fates as mainstream games. With shit like that System Shock remake Kickstarter going on hiatus after years of forgetting that they promised to make a System Shock remake, We Happy Few pulling a bait and switch, showing itself as a story-driven stealth game and proving to be more of a cash-in on the whole survival crafting craze, No Man's Sky showing itself as a finished game but proving not to even be a finished idea. It's a weird time. Oh fuck, yeah, Nox was great. It has a fun throwback high fantasy story with a lot of personality that doesn't take itself seriously, challenging gameplay with tons of depth and replay value, apparently a multiplayer component that some people still enjoy. It has a visual style that is reflective of other beloved games but also stands out from them, and it's available on GOG for fucking $5.99. It's a good time. I don't even care if you steal it, it's EA. Well, GOG probably gets a cut from that, so actually you should probably pay for it. Those guys are a gift from the firmament. I'm not paid to advertise them. I'm not paid to advertise anyone. I'm not paid by anyone. I'm not paid. I need money.